Hello and welcome to Perspectives. Once again, my name is David Schoeneman, I'm your host here. This is going to be part two of a conversation I'm having with Laurie Ortolano, a concerned citizen here in the city of Nashua who has taken on City Hall really to fight on behalf of all of us and the roadblocks that City Hall has put up. Well, roadblocks aren't just roadblocks for inconvenience sake. There's also a very definite effect on our taxes. And we're going to start our conversation today with taxes. Laurie, thanks once again for coming in. Glad to have you here. So we were talking on the break here a moment ago about what's happening with taxes in the city of Nashua.
Right.
The average home assessment went up, you said, about 42% across the city?
42%.
42% increase. So folks who saw their assessment, they got a letter about their assessment,
Right.
like we did. We went up $200,000 on our home. It's a 42% on average increase. And the mayor and City Hall have been bragging about the reduction in the tax rate.
Right.
The tax rate last year was 23, if I'm not mistaken.
2322.
23.22, and now it's down to
1807.
1807. That's a bargain. Yeah. How wonderful it is to see taxes finally decrease, right? They go up every time.
Right.
But not if your home assessment goes up. So the rate can go down.
Yes.
But if your assessment goes up more, you have to take a look at the percentages.
Exactly.
So we've got a roughly 42% increase in the average assessment that folks have on their homes.
Yes.
And that's bad news. But then you see, oh, look, we've got a 20%, roughly 20% decrease in the rate.
Right.
Wow, I mean our taxes are going down. No, because it's the rate times the assessment. That's your tax bill.
Right.
And so for the average tax increase, actual dollar amount increase for the average homeowner in Nashua is going to be 20%.
Yes.
Because if the assessment goes up by 40%, roughly 40%, and the rate comes down 20%, there's still a 20% growth when you multiply those things together. So our taxes, my wife and I, and our home are going to be going up 20%, not the little 2 or 2.2 they think is good.
Higher.
It's going to be very high, and
Yes.
on average, folks are facing that.
Yes.
It's going to be a shock. The bills are coming out next week.
I think so. They might even be out the end of this week. They were sent to the printer at the end of last week. They come back, they go in the mail. So I wouldn't be surprised if certainly before Thanksgiving, but Friday, Saturday, people have tax bills in their mailbox.
So we've had two administrations or 2 terms for our mayor, who has been a big spender, and we've got a very compliant, overall, very compliant Board of Aldermen who goes along with that spending.
Yes.
Very compliant, it seems, Board of Public Works.
Yes.
And anything that the city wants to spend, they just rubber stamp it and spend it. And when you do your right to knows, when you go to these meetings, you're not harassing people. You're asking about what is going on with spending. You're questioning spending. That's been your focus.
I have had a lot of concerns about spending, and I've been going to a lot of public hearings. Because that's where spending, you get to vet that.
Right, and so they don't want to listen to you.
No.
They don't want to answer your questions.
No.
So they're stifling public comment.
Yes.
In order to get you off their backs.
Right. Don't ask. So the public hearings I've gone to have been about spending escrow money, extra money from 2022 to spend in 2023. Mm-hmm. And when they have a public hearing, that's a event where citizens can come out and are supposed to be able to ask questions of the board regarding the spending. So it's an opportunity for you to educate yourself on what's being done here. And it is not restricted to 3 minutes. So that's a great opportunity to participate. And when I went to that hearing on escrow money, I found that they were not willing to answer my questions at all. They stood there and looked at me. I stood up, they faced me, and they literally wouldn't speak. And so they had another hearing a couple days later that I went to, and this time it was to spend about $32 million on 5 different bonds, different bond money. And I supported a couple of them, but I was not supportive of 3 of them, I think. I just felt that there was too much spending. And the bond rate has gone up a lot with the interest rates.
Sure.
So these are going to be expensive payments, much more expensive payments than we've had to make in the past. So I felt we needed to put the brakes on. But again, they were more compliant in that meeting to answer questions, because I literally said to them, I hope when I come out to the hearing in a couple days, you are going to answer my questions, because that's why I'm coming.
Right. And that's why they're supposed to be there.
That's right.
To answer these questions.
And they found me so, if you're speaking in opposition to spending, they just don't like it, and they didn't like me,
You know what? They don't have answers.
They don't.
They are unable to answer the question, and they don't want to look silly with a silly answer.
Right.
And so they get mad.
Right. They just diminish you. They may try to make you feel really small.
Right.
So you go away from the microphone. I know one of the meetings I was at, the hearing, I think on escrow, I happened to watch it on YouTube. And when I was talking, I could see a lady sitting behind me who, when I was asking questions and they refused to answer, she was getting frustrated. She was like mad. I could see that she was like, you got to be kidding me.
Right.
When that meeting ended, that woman had come up to me and she said, I wish I had spoken, but I don't have enough information. I feel like I don't have the information you have. I can't speak. What I tell people is, you don't have to know the details.
Right.
Get up there and say, hey, my personal finances, my home budget is pretty tight. I've got a lot of increases coming down on me. I don't have extra money, and I don't want my city spending money, extra money. I want it returned. I need assistance here.
Yeah.
And that's all you have to say.
Right.
You can share just a very brief message that's only 30 seconds long.
Right.
It says, please, don't spend so much.
Right.
And I've told people that, but they're fearful. I mean, people have said to me, I see what they do to you and how they treat you, and I don't want to be in that situation.
Yeah.
So they've been effective. But this tax rate, certain categories of properties saw increases that were even higher than that 40 or 42%. And they were ranches, because those are the entry-level homes. Some of the condos saw big increases. The multifamilies, 2, 3, 4, huge increases. You saw that on yours, essentially.
Right.
You probably went up 55, 60%.
We went up a lot.
A lot.
It went up a lot.
So you're going to feel it and see it even more.
Yeah, we did go. We went up 50%.
Yeah, 50.
Yeah.
A little more.
Yeah.
Probably 55.
Yeah,
So,
so-
you're in a big differential there. So you're going to
know.
realize a big shift in your tax bill. And
Well, I'm expecting it to be large. I've done the math myself. I know what our tax bill was before. It was high. And I wonder, where's all this money going? And it's going into all these spending. I know when I was on the Board of Aldermen, they just couldn't spend money fast enough. And they were claiming that because the interest rate is so low, that now's the time to spend money. But I don't think a lot of people who make that argument fail to realize that you're not just paying the interest rate, you're paying the principal back too.
Exactly.
I mean, that's a lot of money. You build a $10 million building, you're not just paying the interest on that, you're paying the interest plus the $10 million.
Right.
And where does that come from? It comes from the tax rate, which
Right.
means it comes from us. And so I think folks at home are going to be seeing a huge increase.
Oh.
But it's thanks to really a government that doesn't want to be transparent, in spite of their claims.
Right.
They're not transparent, and they're
No.
abusive to citizens.
They are. And it's concerning, because I would like to see them track differently for the public. When they're coming in to spend money, I would like to see that agenda note, was this budgeted or was it not budgeted? I want to track what they're spending that's budgeted. Did they create a budget where it was in there? The escrow money that they spent, 5 years ago, they had an extra $2 million of money that they wanted to spend on projects. They returned $4.5 million to the taxpayers to lower the rate. The mayor does return. For 3 years, he returned $4.5 million. This year and last year, he returned $4 million. But the leftover beyond the $4.5 million has grown from 5 years ago, $2 million, to $7.5 million. That's a lot of extra money that's left in the budget.
Yes, they're pulling that money from us, and they're spending it on
Right. So they returned.
something else.
So 5 years ago, they returned $4.5 million and kept $2 million. This year, with all this hardship, they returned $4 million and kept $7.5 million. That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
And they built into that $7+ million or 7.3 for new positions. Now, they have never really put new positions in escrow money.
Sure, because the money may not be available next year.
Well, what they're doing is funding positions that are recurring costs. And
Right.
when they have used escrow money in the past, they have used them for one-time hits.
Yeah,
on
capital
things
of
they
some
need.
kind,
Right,
something that they
capital,
need.
a project that needs to
Right,
be
but
done.
not something that's is not going to be funded next year
They
unless
funded
you.
big positions like $150,000, emergency manager position, 2 new police officers, part-time assistant to economic development director, and maybe 1 other part-time person. So 5 new positions came rolling in, 4 or 5, and they're in the budget for next year now. And I think new positions need to be vetted through the budget process.
They absolutely should be.
You really should not allow your escrow money to pull positions in. The other thing is, at the time they were voting on this, they had just finished the first quarter of spending on the budget for 2023. And I think that they didn't tally the numbers fully to release them, but I suspected that first quarter spending was down a lot because they had a lot of positions that they were unable to fund or hire into. So there's a lot of extra money sitting there. And because all that extra money was sitting there for unfunded positions, why keep the 7.5? You have some money you're going to be able to use. But instead they kept it. And it could see the writing on the wall on where that was going. But even showing them the graph and what they've done and how it doesn't look like we're controlling our budgeting very carefully or being attentive to extra money in the budgeting process, they were, they just become angry. They just get angry that you're pointing that out, and they don't want their plans derailed.
Yeah, and I think that some of them know they don't know.
Right.
The budget process and the budget, it's complex.
Complicated. It is.
Really is. And you have to really dig into it and spend some time to do it. And it takes a lot of time. And I think a lot of those folks, frankly, just don't spend that time.
No.
Because they don't know. And they're unable to justify the expense, but they're unable to stand up to the mayor either.
Right.
And that's what happens. So it's easier to stand up to the citizens than it is to stand up to the mayor who wants the spending no matter what. So that's how it goes. It's terrible.
It's tough. And they have that riverfront project that they're doing that was costed out at $21 million. They voted on that last December. I was opposed to that because it was a big project, and I could see the shift that was coming. And they voted to approve it, and now Director Cummings has come back and said it's going to cost a lot more because they didn't bond it at that point. They didn't sell the bonds. Now they got to start selling bonds. The cost of these projects just based on construction and workers has risen even higher.
Right.
And now the interest rates on the bonds have gone up.
These projects are always underestimated. This is how municipalities get things through. They tell you it's going to cost $10 million.
Right.
They know it's not going to.
Right.
I firmly believe that. They know it's not going to.
Well, look at the new school. That's like 92 million.
Look at the Arts Center. That went from 14 million to 25 million, so it doubled.
Right.
And
that's holding at that level.
Yeah.
They just came in with a bond proposal for the library. So the library needs renovations. I think those were $16 or $20 million.
Yeah.
So they're looking for that to be bonded. Again, it's dealing with aging city infrastructure.
Right.
But we're doing all this new construction on top of all of this aging city infrastructure. And, I think, and there's a lot of changes going on downtown. A lot of construction going on downtown. Not just the Arts Center, but the high street apartments and the flats. That there's a lot of units in there. Bronstein Development went from about 45 to 250.
It's a big increase in the number of units there.
Big
That's
change
a big
in
project.
that area.
Yeah.
There's some land that's been sold down there, parking lots that have potential for low-income housing units that are being explored. So that's going to be interesting down there. They're pushing the parking garage issues now. You knew that was going to happen with the Arts Center opening.
Sure.
The High Street parking garage has a lease on it from the Melbourne Lansing that's doing the construction for the High Street flats. The people who purchase or rent apartments in that building are going to get parking spaces over in the High Street garage. So
not in the parking lot that's right next to their building?
No, that I think is still reserved for the businesses. So they're going to go into the High Street garage, and the company is renting spaces from the garage. But that garage is going to be packed. I don't even know if that garage has the capacity, honestly, for the parking that's going to be required for the people who go into those those apartments. And then you've got your Elm Street garage closer to the Art Center. Both of them are in need of repair. They're looking at $10 million is what Tim pitched on that, Director Cummings. And you know it's going to be higher.
It's
And
always higher.
And I think they're going to come around eventually, and sooner rather than later, and say we need another garage. There's going to be a construction project for a third garage somewhere that they're going to want to put up.
Yeah. This doesn't look like
There's a lot going on
well-planned-
down there. And
well-planned growth. I don't see it.
I think, you know what they do? They do their Imagine Nashua plan, which is the big, it's a dream.
Yeah.
It's the Nashua dream. And the city puts leadership, the mayor and Director Cummings, a lot of stock and a lot of weight into that plan because they'll say, well, we got input from 1,000 people. But when you read that plan, it's very extensive. There isn't a single cost to any item in it because it's a wish list.
Sure, and it sounds great. Who wouldn't want these things?
Aspirational.
Yes.
Right? It's all these aspirational nice things that we want to have in our community, and we can say, I can have this, 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 this.
Right.
But then the city starts grabbing off of that plan and saying, we're going to fund these. Well, now you're in a whole different realm.
Yeah.
And they always like to say, well, this was part of our Imagine Nashua plan. Well, it was. And you showed it to everyone without assigning a cost to anything.
Right.
And I think if citizens had costs on everything and understood the magnitude of what they're looking at, then they'd start thinking about, well, I'm not going to say I want these 10 things. I'm going to pick 2. What are my priority 2?
Right.
But
right.
they seem to give themselves the privilege of using a unbudgeted, undocumented monetary plan to say this is what we're going to do down here because the public wants the riverfront walkway done and the public wants these other garages done. And
yeah, it's a standard MO.
it is.
That's
Public
what they
wants
do.
more lighting.
That's right. That's what they do. But then the bill comes in.
And then the bill comes in.
So you have to ask people, you're having a 20% increase in your taxes this year. If you have another 20% increase next year, we can do these things. And then see what people say.
Right.
They may not say they want to do it quite as readily.
Well, I mean, I don't think these tough times with money and inflation are going to end soon.
No.
And there's a lot of layoffs happening now. I mean, high tech has laid off heavily in the last 6 weeks. And it's sweeping through a lot of industry. So you're going to have people out of work and you're going to have people with very high costs. And I just don't see, even young people, my kids are young. One of them lives in Europe and the cost of food and everything over there is totally different. The other one lives in the South, and as a 26-year-old, he's finding that managing his budget with a mortgage is very challenging.
Yeah.
Like he was saying, we can't go out to eat anymore. We just can't go out to eat. Went for Mexican food, had a meal, one drink, and an appetizer, and it was $106. And he's like, we've decided that's not in the picture anymore.
Yeah.
But then grocery shopping is he's called up and said, you're not going to believe what my grocery bill was.
Yeah.
So he's really getting a lesson on independence.
That's a tough lesson.
It is. And they don't have a lot of extra money. These young people don't, to go out and have a social life or go to a concert or something.
Yeah.
And he does well. They do well. But he's finding it's just very tight. No extra money at all.
And no extra money. And it all comes down to what the cities are spending, in addition to the inflation, of course. But it comes down, our tax rate and tax bills come down to what the city is spending. And you've been working very hard trying to get information on what the city is doing.
Right.
Now, it's a hard process. Now, there's a new position that's coming into Concord. Tell us about that, the ombudsman position.
Yeah, so there's the right to know ombudsman position. And it was a piece of legislation that was put together, I think, 3 years ago. And Maine has this position. There are quite a few states that have a right to know ombudsman. So it's it's an office that's established to allow citizens to take a complaint or a petition to a separate office that will address that at a very low cost. Your filing fee will be $35 instead of close to $300 to go into court. It shifts a burden off the courts too. I don't think these are their favorite cases to handle. And honestly, they're dealing with a lot of other serious crime issues.
Sure.
And so
These days, yes.
These days. But access to your government records and knowing what your government is doing is really important.
And you have a
today.
right to this information.
Absolutely.
Absolutely have a right to it.
Right.
So if a citizen now wants to step up like you've done and say, I want some information on my assessment, or I want information on city spending, if they don't get satisfaction, so they don't go to that ombudsman first to make that request. They go to the city department.
Yep, they start with the city and see if the city complies. And if they feel that the city wasn't compliant within the terms of the law, which is RSA 91A, that's the law that governs open records. And there's great memorandums put out by the Attorney General's office, a nice document book that will take you through all of the interpretation of that. It was updated in 2015. So if you're not satisfied, you can write up your reasons you're not satisfied, essentially like a little petition. It doesn't have to be a legal document.
Your own words.
Your own words. I asked for this, and usually dates and times are important. On, October 12th, I asked for these records. And the secret with Right to Know is it has to be about asking for a document or records. You can't just ask questions and get answers. Right to Know doesn't require the government to answer a question. It requires the government to provide the records that you're asking, or the documents.
Very important distinction.
Very important distinction, because some people get angry that they don't answer a question. Now, I think a lot of governments should just answer a question. They're a basic question.
Easy enough to do.
Right.
That's what these meetings are for.
And the AG's office does distinguish that governments, municipalities should consider answering questions, especially if it doesn't require them to put a record in a different format because the format isn't there. Or it's easier to answer the question than to go get a record. Now, I have found a lot of times I'll ask a question, they won't answer it, which forces me to write a right to know for a record.
Right.
And I think, golly, if you just answered my question, I wouldn't put this in to get
I'll
a
say
record.
this, too, about Nashua when I first came here, and I heard from other people, too. We felt taxes were high at the time, but everyone always said, but, if I go to City Hall, they're really nice to me down there. That's what people said.
Right. And
it was a very cooperative environment.
Yes.
But that now seems ages ago.
Well, I find the entry-level people that are doing their job, the people making, $18 an hour, 15,
Right.
$18 an hour, they are good.
That's good.
I think they want to answer the questions.
Yeah.
It's the management, the upper management, the mayor, the legal office.
They set the tone.
They have told them not to, or to be disruptive, or they don't let them answer the question. They turn around and say, well, you got to talk to so-and-so, and so-and-so won't talk to you.
Yeah. I went to city clerk's office today just to get some information, and I will say the person there was very helpful.
Oh, yeah.
Kind, nice,
Yes.
friendly,
Yes.
and very, very helpful.
Yes.
So
DPW,
I think you're right on those levels.
The motor vehicle, excellent in there.
Right.
Tax office, excellent in there. The three people now in the clerk's office, they're very friendly when you go in. So I think the entry-level people, they all want to do their job well. They want to please you. They want to give you what you want. But, for some of us, a label came down, and, it's not worth debating how that happened or where it happened, but it when they choose to do that and they choose to box out certain people, it creates a lot more work. And I think they're doing it to groups. They're doing it to people they decide they don't like, I mean, I got written off, I got slammed on social media as a MAGA Trumper, written up all over the page, MAGA Trumper. I was never a MAGA Trumper.
Yeah.
Ever. I wasn't.
When I was on the Board of Aldermen, I was accused of being a Free Stater. I didn't even know what a Free Stater was.
I know.
I had to look it up.
Language. I don't still know the definition of that.
But that's what was happening.
Right.
And I think it's very easy for that side to just create a label and to try to dismiss.
There are a lot of good parties, and there are a lot of good people in both parties.
Right.
But I think this group that's in power has some really dark people in it.
Yeah.
And they are really manipulative. They attach themselves to people on the outside who are using social media in a very inappropriate way. And it ties to the mayor, board of aldermen members, and it's really disruptive.
Yeah, we're not going to rehash it all here, but you were really labeled and called some very nasty things.
Oh, yeah.
More in fairly recent Board of Aldermen meetings.
Oh, yeah, which is why I don't go anymore.
Yeah,
I don't.
it's terrible.
I mean, I'm working on taking legal action on that and trying to address it that way, but I'm tired of having to be in that situation, and I'm tired of them being able to do that.
Well, some of the folks at home are too, if they might want to make their own request for right to know. But so what this office will do, so if they're not getting satisfaction, if they're getting stiff-armed,
$35, they go up there, the individual that's going to run the office will be an attorney. They'll have a legal background. It might be a retired judge or somebody, I don't know. And they will look at the case, they will read your complaint, they will ask the city for a response, and they will issue a judgment. If you're not satisfied with it, you can take it into Superior Court and have it reheard, de novo, which means as a new case. They'll look at it as if they're fresh eyes, they're seeing it for the first time, independent of the ruling of the ombudsman. So you can pursue it at the next level, but I'm hoping that goes a long way to just getting stuff cleared up, making people aware, making governments, making municipalities own up to their stuff a lot quicker.
Yeah. If this person's job partly is to relieve pressure on the courts, hopefully they're going to take that and issue some rulings that are based on the law and ask the city to just comply.
Right.
It's so much easier.
Oh, it's so much easier. We don't know. I haven't been able to get any information from the state on when this office would be set up, which is rather a riot because they're not releasing any information on a right to know ombudsman office. And it's aggravating because I think it's being handled in the governor's office, and the governor's office is exempt from right to know.
Oh, really?
Yes. So you can't get anything through right to know from the governor's office.
Interesting. So who is this person going to report to? To the governor?
I believe so.
Interesting.
Yeah. It might be the AG's office. But, so I don't know what's happening, but I hope something is happening soon because we have a lot of interest from people in the state to use it.
Good. Well, I hope that people will be more encouraged to think that I'm not going to get run over by a Mack truck here. I'm going to actually have some recourse. I have someone on my side
That I can afford.
and that I can afford, and I can actually get the information that I'm looking for. Because all I want is the information.
That's right.
If I have
Simple.
a 20% increase in my tax bill, I want to know where it's going.
Right.
What's happening with that money.
Right.
Laurie, thanks again for coming in.
Thanks for having
Time
me.
once again goes very quickly. We'll have to do it again. I'm sure
Yes.
we'll have another show soon. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. And I want to thank you folks, too, once again for tuning in. My name is David Schoeneman, and you're watching Perspectives. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.